Vice President Joe Biden's campaign is celebrating some major victories on Super Tuesday. And now the question is, how would he fare against President Trump if he were to be the Democratic nominee?
According to Daily Beast political reporter Hanna Trudo, Biden's success may very well depend on turning out the demographic of voters in the primary that Dems are looking to lean on in the general. And she joins us now to expand on this. Hanna, great to see you. Welcome back.
Thank you.
All right, lay out the case that you're making in this piece. What is your reporting telling you?
Yeah, so I was based in Virginia, in Virginia Beach, right before Super Tuesday, and that was one of the critical battlegrounds that we saw obviously move blue from 2018 and 2019.
Right.
And it ended up going for Joe Biden on Super Tuesday. So what I picked up while reporting that story out was sort of these suburban women are a key critical factor, not just on Super Tuesday states, but in the electorate in general, in the general election against Trump. So what they were sort of feeling was they thought a more moderate type of Democrat, at the time it was Bloomberg. I went to a couple of his events there, also a few Biden events. Yeah. They sort of thought that he was the best position solely for the reason that they think he can beat Trump,
just for beating
which is
Trump.
What we hear all the time.
Yep.
But it was interesting because, some of those women are being closely watched because they went for Trump last time. So it's sort of an interesting demographic. And obviously Virginia Beach is a little bit more swingy, but I was also in McLean, which is, very rich, and Arlington, and so all over the different suburbs. Just picking up a sense that a more moderate approach is what some of these suburban women were looking for.
So what do they mean whenever they say moderate? This is what I'm always interested in. Is it I am personally moderate and that's what we need in order, because that's what I want? Or is it I have these positions, I don't think that my positions could win the general election, and thus we need to nominate a moderate like Joe Biden?
Yeah, I think that's a good question.
Yeah.
I think it definitely depends. I've heard both of it, and I heard both in the course of reporting out this story. So there was the first camp that said, I don't want Bernie Sanders, and I don't want Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
So I want, whether it's Bloomberg, whether it's Biden, Amy Klobuchar before she dropped out.
Sure.
So that's I think the majority of people that I interviewed, a couple dozen women said that. But there were also this group of people that definitely said, my heart is with Warren or Bernie.
Right.
But I don't know if my neighbors could go for him. So
yeah.
it's kind of this mythical
They're kind of playing
thing.
this like pundit role.
Yeah, and we hear that, and we hear people say, oh, I don't think my neighbor or the person in line with me at the grocery store is going to go for this person. But that's definitely a trend that we feel like is driving some people. I mean, I certainly heard that reporting this out.
Yeah. Here's the thing that I worry about Democrats who are leaning. We heard the suburban case back in 2016. Remember, it was for every voter that Trump picks up, in the Rust Belt, we're going to win in the suburbs. Right. We're going to win two in the suburbs. That was the case in Pennsylvania in particular.
Yeah.
Didn't work out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There are a lot more non-college voters and non-college non-voters who can be brought in than there are college-educated voters. What we've seen is this is the most sort of energized group in the Trump era. They want anyone. They will do anything to beat Trump.
Yes.
They will vote for anyone who can beat Trump. Positions, they don't care if this is the person to beat Trump. They are with him. To me, that means they're going to be with whoever the nominee is. Like, this is a group that is just motivated by voting against Trump.
Yes.
You don't need a specific nominee to bring them out. The groups you should be worried about are the ones who stayed home in 2016, who stayed home maybe in 2018.
Yes.
How are you going to get them excited and out to the polls in order to defeat Donald Trump?
Well, I think that's a critical part of it. A lot of these people ultimately said, even if it's Bernie Sanders, I will vote for him. And I think it takes pressing to get to that point because it's not their first choice. It's not their third or fourth choice. But ultimately they say, well, if he's the nominee and he's
their vote blue no matter who, people.
Yeah.
See, that's what happened with Trump, Hannah, which is that look, Trump was only the choice of 30% of the Republican Party, right? But all these people in the suburbs who are, if you're pro-life, like, what are you going to do? And so they all ended up voting for Trump. None of them stayed home. In fact, many of them ended up organizing because they saw the stakes. It seems that that's pretty much going to be the same case amongst the suburban women or the suburban voter, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's not a huge sense of like, well, I'm going to stay home if it's not my, preferred person, just because Trump is so big. I do think Biden has, in different, not necessarily with suburban women, but in different pockets, he has a little bit more of a challenge to energize people for obvious reasons. bipartisans. I think the fact that he swept so much of Super Tuesday is surprising to Bernie's campaign in particular, in that Biden's been in the race the whole time, and every single person was trying to say, oh, I'm much better than him. And for a lot of the primary, we saw that was somewhat successful in the polls.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's people showed up, kind of maybe begrudgingly, some people for Biden. So I think that's going to be, something to watch in contrast with Bernie.
I think it's the electability thing. Once it was like, everybody lining up behind Biden and like everybody else is out, this is the guy.
Yeah.
Those suburban voters were like, okay, this is the guy we're supposed to vote for. We're going to vote for him.
Who were at these like Bloomberg events and said, I was with Biden, but I don't think he's really up to the task. I like Bloomberg. Well, Bloomberg is out.
Yeah.
They will likely go to Biden, I would assume.
Yeah. You would expect so.
Yeah.
So you also had the scoop about Jim Clyburn. You had an interview with him in which he said that Bernie Sanders didn't reach out to him to seek his endorsement. Sanders responded. He was asked about that by Rachel Maddow last night. Let's take a listen to what Bernie had to say.
Because I know Jim Clyburn very well. And actually, Jim and I worked together, working with Obama, to put $11 billion into community health centers, which is one of the very important parts of the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. So I know Jim and work with him. Look, it is no secret. Jim is a very nice guy, and I like him, and I respect him. His politics are not my politics. And I respect them, but there was no way in God's earth that he was going to be endorsing me.
What do you make of that response, Hanna?
Yeah, I think that's a fair response, given where they stand ideologically. I think when I talked to Congressman Clyburn, he definitely acknowledged that he's known Bernie Sanders for many years and that they've worked productively on various bills. But I kind of pressed him and said, did he specifically do X, Y, and Z to get your endorsement in the way that other people had or had rumored to have done? And he said, no, not really. But I don't. He kind of added on the caveat, well, I can't be courted anyway, which was a little bit of a kind of
first of all, that's not true.
A love.
As anybody knows who follows this, that is absolutely not true. I guess my question is, I've been critical earlier in the show, which is that it seems to lack kind of basic political acumen, because they did do this with Harry Reid, right? They flew to Nevada and had a sit down, and there was like a recognition that we got to keep. Look, Harry Reid's not going to endorse Bernie Sanders, but they could keep him out, which is what they did. And they didn't do that whenever it came to South Carolina.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I hadn't thought of it in the Reid context. It's interesting because I think with Bernie, he had that opportunity, like you're saying, given his poll his success or lack thereof last time in South Carolina. So I think maybe he could have made an extra effort. But I think there also was an understanding that he's very close to Biden. So that's a little bit fair.
Well, you followed this because he didn't want to. He didn't really get in there until the very last second. He was like, maybe, and the guy's like fifth place. There were all these leaks coming out of Clyburn world where he's like, maybe not. Maybe I'll sit this thing out, right?
Yeah, and I was at his fish fry in South Carolina in June, I think it was, and there were like 25 or 24, whatever it was, contenders there at the time, as they were all kind of courting him officially.
He can't be courted, Hanna.
So, it's like I think that's the extent that a lot of people went with him, but I think there was maybe a chance for Bernie to up his game.
Yeah, I think you're right. Maybe there was a chance to keep him out. That was the best possible opportunity. On the other hand, I don't think anyone understood how much his endorsement would mean, or that Biden winning a state that he was expected to win would create this just tidal wave, ground shift after he had been so weak in the early states. I think Bernie understood, I need to win Nevada. Right? Yes. And so they went all in on that. They thought, we'll hold down our losses in South Carolina. But if Joe wins and he's expected to win, no big deal. Yeah. Well, that turned out not to be the case.
Yeah, I think that's been really interesting. I was with him in New Hampshire. I'm from the state. I think we've talked about this before. Biden's performance in New Hampshire was so bad, and Iowa was really bad too, but it was just this feeling of wow, he's not going to catch on. And then his campaign kept saying, to their credit, wait till South Carolina, and everybody's skeptical because it's their fourth, fifth place in some of these other contests. Right. But I think just the how rapidly it changed, with all these endorsements coming on him so quickly after that, it was just I don't think anybody
saw that coming.
Let me ask you this,
maybe not even him.
Because you've covered this so well, which is that with Biden how much of it was a self-fulfilling prophecy? We're going to go all in on South Carolina, which gave that signal to all these people who, like the Obama world and all this who are now jumping out. Was it that, how much of it was like, we're going to win Obama, and then when he did that, or won South Carolina, that the Obama world was like, okay, we can finally come out and endorse Joe?
Yeah, that's hard. That's a good question. It's hard to say. I mean, I haven't reported on that aspect specifically, but I think it's pretty clear that like that was the tipping point.
Yeah, there's no question about it.
You know, as soon as that happened, it was just kind of an obvious next step because of the primary calendar being the way it is, and Super Tuesday having such a delegate-rich nature to it. I think it was sort of fairly obvious that he had to be rallied around for a lot of these people that came out and endorsed him.
Well, he was like the last man standing. Yeah. You know, they tried on all these other people. Maybe they'll catch on. They didn't catch on. This was the last possible moment that they could throw in with someone, anyone who could beat Bernie Sanders. And Joe was the last one, you know, the only one who kind of proved the case that he could win over people who weren't just like white college educated folks.
Yeah, and I think the other part of that, just with Bloomberg having put so much on the line on Super Tuesday, I don't think everybody was convinced that he was going to do really well. I think there were a few people that endorsed him, some notable people. Yeah. But it was really this like, well, he has not been tested. Biden's at least, you know, we know him and all this kind of stuff.
Right, and so the debate performances were terrible.
The debate performances were terrible. Yeah, and so I think it was just this feeling of like, we can't all rally behind him.
Right.
Joe Biden just won South Carolina. Let's just go with that.
Yeah.
You know.
So interesting, Hannah. We always appreciate your reporting.
Thank you. Go follow her on Twitter, Hanna Trudo. All right. We'll have more Rising for you right after this.